Japan aren't supposed to be one of the most feared teams at the 2026 World Cup. They're supposed to be the underdogs, the nice story, the team that works hard, plays attractive football, and maybe pulls off an upset before eventually going home. But that story is outdated, because over the last few years, Japan have been quietly collecting something that should terrify the rest of the football world. Victims. Germany, Spain, England. Some of the biggest names in international football have already learned the hard way that this isn't the same Japan anymore. And here's what's scary. This generation might be even better. While fans obsess over France, Argentina, Brazil, and England, Japan have been building one of the deepest and most technically gifted squads in their history. A squad filled with players competing in the Premier League, the Bundesliga, La Liga, and some of Europe's biggest clubs. These aren't players hoping to survive against elite opposition. They're facing elite opposition every single week. For decades, Japan's dream was simple: prove they belong. That mission is over. Now, the goal is much bigger. Can Japan finally break through the ceiling that has haunted them for nearly 30 years? Can they reach the quarterfinals for the first time ever? Or maybe, can they do something even crazier? Because if you've only been paying attention to the traditional football giants, you're missing one of the most dangerous stories heading into World Cup 2026. And once you see the squad Japan have assembled, you'll understand why some fans believe the Samurai Blue could become every favorite's worst nightmare. Let's break it down. The biggest reason Japan are suddenly being taken seriously is simple. The talent level has exploded. 20 years ago, most Japanese players built their careers inside Japan. Today, Japan's best players are scattered across Europe's top leagues, and that changes everything, because the fastest way to improve as a footballer is to compete against world-class opponents every week. That's exactly what this generation has been doing. Let's start with the captain, Wataru Endo, a player trusted by Liverpool, one of the biggest clubs on the planet. Think about that for a second. Liverpool could have signed players from almost anywhere in the world. Instead, they looked at Endo and saw someone capable of competing at the highest level of English football. That tells you everything you need to know about his quality. Endo isn't flashy. He isn't the player making highlight reels every weekend. But every great team needs someone willing to do the dirty work. Win tackles, break up attacks, control the tempo, provide leadership. That's Endo. And every successful tournament team needs a player like him. Then there's Takefusa Kubo, the player many fans believe could become Japan's biggest star in North America. Kubo represents everything modern Japanese football has become: technically gifted, fearless, creative, and explosive. The type of player who can change a game with one moment of brilliance. Defenders hate facing players like Kubo because he doesn't need much space. 1 second he's surrounded, the next he's gone. And suddenly your defense is scrambling to recover. If Japan make a deep run in this tournament, don't be surprised if Kubo is right at the center of it. But what makes Japan dangerous isn't one superstar. It's the depth. That's where this squad becomes genuinely frightening. Takehiro Tomiyasu brings years of experience against elite attackers. Hiroki Ito has competed at Bayern Munich. Ko Itakura has established himself in Europe. Daichi Kamada has proven himself in some of the toughest leagues in football. Ao Tanaka continues to develop his reputation as one of Japan's most reliable midfielders. Everywhere you look, there's quality. Everywhere you look, there's experience. And perhaps most importantly, everywhere you look, there's confidence. That's something previous Japanese generations didn't always have. For years, Japan entered tournaments believing they could compete. This squad enters believing it can win. That's a huge difference, because football at the highest level is often decided by mentality. Talent matters, tactics matter, but belief matters too. When Germany saw Japan in their World Cup group, many people assumed Germany would win. Japan didn't. When Spain faced Japan, many people expected Spain's quality to shine through. Japan didn't. The Samurai Blue stepped onto the field believing they belonged, and that's exactly how they played. What impressed football experts wasn't just the results, it was the maturity. Japan didn't panic. They didn't lose their shape. They didn't get overwhelmed by the occasion. Instead, they stayed organized, stayed disciplined, and waited for their opportunities. Then they struck. Fast, precise, clinical. That's what makes them such a nightmare matchup. Most underdogs rely on passion. Japan combined passion with structure. Think about March Madness. Every year, a few underdogs shock the tournament, but eventually, many of them run out of answers. Japan are different. Their success isn't built on emotion alone. It's built on systems, coaching, preparation, and years of development. Which brings us to Hajime Moriyasu, one of the most underrated national team coaches in world football. Moriyasu has spent years building this project. He understands something many coaches never fully grasp. You don't need to dominate possession to dominate a game. Sometimes the smartest strategy is patience. Absorb pressure, stay compact, wait for mistakes, then punish them. That's exactly how Japan have produced some of their biggest victories. And now, Moriyasu has something previous Japanese coaches rarely possessed: elite-level depth. If one player struggles, another can step in. If one tactical approach isn't working, adjustments can be made. That's what separates good teams from dangerous teams. The scary part? Many football fans still underestimate Japan. Some people still think of them as a team that simply works hard, a team that runs a lot, a team that's difficult to play against. That's true, but it's no longer the full story. This squad has genuine quality, the kind of quality that can decide matches against elite opponents, the kind of quality that can carry a team through knockout football. And that's why the rest of the world should be paying attention. Because Japan aren't arriving at the 2026 World Cup hoping for respect. They already have it. Now they're chasing something they've never achieved before: history. And that's what makes this World Cup so important for Japan. Because for nearly 3 decades, one number has followed this program everywhere: 16. The round of 16. The barrier Japan have never managed to break. 7 World Cups, countless talented players, multiple golden generations, and yet every single time, the journey has ended before the quarterfinals. Sometimes by a small margin, sometimes in heartbreaking fashion. The pain of 2022 still lingers. After shocking Germany, after beating Spain, after topping one of the toughest groups in the entire tournament, Japan looked ready to make history. Then came Croatia. A tense battle, a penalty shootout, and another painful exit. For some teams, a defeat like that creates doubt. For others, it creates motivation. Everything we've seen from this generation suggests it's the second one. Because these players aren't dreaming anymore, they're believing. There's a huge difference. Previous Japanese teams hoped they belonged among football's elite. This team knows it does. They've played against elite players. They've beaten elite players. They've competed in elite leagues. The fear factor is gone. And when fear disappears, dangerous things start happening. Will Japan win the World Cup? Probably not. The depth of nations like France, Argentina, England, and Brazil is still extraordinary. But here's a better question. Would you be shocked if Japan reached the quarterfinals? 5 years ago, most people would have said yes. Today, not really. And that's how you know how far this program has come. Because Japan are no longer judged by whether they can cause an upset. They're judged by how far they can actually go. That's a completely different conversation. And maybe that's the biggest sign of progress. The football world no longer sees Japan as a surprise package. It sees them as a legitimate threat, a team capable of ruining a Giants tournament, a team capable of writing history, a team nobody wants to face when the knockout rounds begin. The Samurai Blue have spent decades climbing toward football's top table. Now they're close enough to touch it. The only question left is whether 2026 becomes the tournament where Japan finally kicks the door down. So now that you know why Japan's 2026 World Cup squad looks absolutely dangerous, you're ready for the next level. Click the video on your screen right now to find out which underdog nation could become the biggest surprise of World Cup 2026.